Get 3 coffins ready, kid, because our latest podcast, Make My Day, is venturing off into the wild and sprawling frontier that is Clint Eastwood's career. More movies than Stephen King has books, and more genres than all of the franchises we've covered over at the Halloweenies. Now, I know what you're thinking. Do they really need to start another show? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I kind of lost track myself. But being this is a podcast, the most powerful medium in the world for pop culture conversation, and Clint's output is infinite, you've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do ya, punk? Find out today and subscribe to Make My Day, a Clint Eastwood podcast now, wherever you get your audio.
Hello, and welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby Novak, and I'm here to read you a couple of bedtime stories. Before we begin, I wanted to give a quick announcement. Basically, Apple is forcing a lot of companies to give up 30% of all their sales, so that means my Patreon is a part of that. In order to get around this, Patreon has started charging 30% more on iOS. However, if you'd like to join Patreon and you're an Apple user, all you have to do is sign up through a web browser instead of the iOS store. You can still use the Patreon app as well, but just make sure you do your initial sign up through a browser, and any other purchases as well. This goes for all your favorite creators you support on Patreon. And I would double check some of your other apps, the pricing on some of the other apps you use, not just Patreon, because Apple has enforced this on other companies as well. I'll talk more about it in the ramble at the end if you'd like to know more. With that out of the way, how are you tonight? Let's get to the stories. First up this evening is a tale by author Tuesday. This is Salt. It must be dawn by now. There is a magnetic current between the rising sun and falling moon that moves over the earth as a new day lifts into the sky. It's easy to forget to pay attention. Humans often do. I'm sure I had before. Now that I am less than, the parts that have not yet left me are what I cling to. There isn't much left. There are some kind of evergreen trees around me. I can smell them, even now. Their needles fall silently and rot. Nothing is safe from the consequence of living. It might be raining now, or maybe it was sometime in the night. The urge to shiver itches somewhere, inside or underneath. I'm not sure which. I try to remember the texture of wool blankets, the sensation of warming up after being caught in a winter storm. It's hard to keep track of my consciousness. It has become some number of frayed threads that lead to dead ends, knotting together in the wrong pattern. I wonder, sometimes, how long I've been here. I try to count the days, as if I can measure time in any way that matters. Where am I? Somewhere There must be a name for it. A spot on a map. A latitude and longitude that converge. But never mind. I can conjure glimpses of my life, like one reel picture shows. Here I am, born on a withering plot, the last felled fruit from the barren womb. There I am, running, running, running. Between there and here, I am spooning broth into wooden bowls and flipping the pages of books. My hands were rough, but my cheeks were soft. My hair fell down my back in red ribbons. My blood fell in ribbons, too. I drift to and from, in and out, between worlds. Sometimes I fall into a nothing place, but I always come back here, like waking from sleep. In my mind, I open my eyes, and time has passed. Would that I were dust. An animal trots over me with gentle feet. There's an old wives' tale that says you shiver every time someone walks over your future grave. The animal roots around in the grass for a moment, and then it's gone. I wonder if it's spring, and if ripe apples have fallen from orchard trees, eaten by worms. I roll the memory of the bright flavor around on my tongue, longing for hunger. A light rain has rolled in and the earth becomes rich and fragrant. It's bittersweet to feel the comfort of a storm without feeling the rain on my skin. The last sensation I felt was burning. They tied me to a tree in the night. The rain falls harder now, and bugs scurry underground. I hear the dull rumble of thunder. The storm thrashes overhead violently. The wind whips through the branches and the world howls. The raindrops sound like men marching. I am underwater, a shipwrecked land thing. My lungs flutter, my heart pumps panicked blood. A will to live is a heavy burden. I pretend that I am floating, but there is nothing left to fear. Water is just as vicious as fire. The rain passes, and the world blooms under the sun. Worms slither to the surface to be plucked by birds. The earth drinks in the water. Life keeps moving. I long for creature comforts, tobacco in a pipe, the ripe kiss of wine, butter melting on warm bread. They came in the night and tied me to the tree, poured the oil, lit the match. There were potatoes in the pan, turning golden, and then my blood was on the floor. I spent my days curing meats and hanging flowers from the ceiling to dry. I washed my linens with water from the lake and hung those too. In the spring, there were so many plants to harvest, so many ways to cure illness, to heal wounds, to heal burns. The day moves slowly past me. Crickets begin to chirp. I wonder if there is a moon out tonight. Someone has a fire going close by. I hear faint tendrils of the song she's singing. Can she see the stars? There was no moon the night they came, but the blaze lit the sky. My blood danced in the firelight. The song comes to an end, and the fire is put out. The smoke hangs in the air. The traveler is alone, quiet and peaceful. The girls came to me in the night, too. Little things, slender and rosy-cheeked. They brought me rabbits and shyly asked for tonics and herbs. I crushed petals and poured them into glass jars and sealed them with cork and wax. I said a prayer and pushed them into their hands. I was not welcome in their church or at their tables, but they were always welcome at mine. A hound bayed somewhere out there. It's a lonely sound, the sound of longing. Companionship was never something I needed, but I enjoyed company from time to time. Men, mostly, just passing through. They stayed with me for a night or two, and then they moved on. Some were gentle, others were not. One of them asked me to come with him. I didn't. Of course I didn't. The girls came for love potions and spells. One brought me milk on a balmy night. She said it was for my baby, the one growing inside of me. She said she could tell because of how my skin glowed. I gave her a little bottle of lavender and cinnamon, and she kissed my hand and kissed my belly. She skipped down the hill. They dragged me down the hill and lit the match. The night falls silent. Even the nocturnal creatures have crawled into their nests. It must be the witching hour. It's bad luck to be awake now. The stillness makes me want to scream. The silence hangs heavily over me. He was silent when he came, my boy. He came out pink and perfect and silent. They lit the match, and I burned up. There was nothing I could do. There were potatoes in the pan turning golden, and then my blood was on the floor. They cut my skin and cut my hair and dragged me naked down the hill. The women, they came to have their babies cut out. They brought me gold and salt and asked for something for the pain, and I helped them. They called me witch, devil, hell wife. The last one had yellow hair. She came in the night with a babe still at her breast, and she begged me. And then she died. She bled for days in her bed, She told the truth. And she died. And I burned. They used knives to slice me open, and blood poured out of me. They stripped me naked. I ran and they caught me. They dragged me down the hill. They tied me to the tree. They poured the oil. They lit the match. They buried me. It must be dawn by now. The earth is damp, and I want to shiver. An animal trots over me with gentle feet. And last but certainly not least, tonight we have a tale by author Manhat. This is Cataclysm. The sonar again returned nothing. Another routine scan of the depths surrounding us, to only remind us of this static nightmare that continued to string us along. Some expected it, the importance of potential contact entirely absent from their lives. Others felt interrogative, obliged to ask why this had failed, why there wasn't anything out there, why my leadership had failed to spearhead any successes. Others were kept from even knowing the full extent of our situation as we aimlessly cruised 10,000 feet below the surface of the ocean in the most articulated and accepted crusade to deny the mortality of everything. To those who it at least mattered to, I cared as much as they did, while every waking hour became a performance to maintain the walls of secrecy in my position. I too wanted everyone to know that I shared their exact same creeping anxieties. But I needed them to know, not in fear of them pushing me to accept something that I did not want to accept. And acceptance was impossible. It was as if there was some parasite or some inert function I was born with that did not allow me to see that above us lie only nuclear plains of dust, as a manifestation of the hatred mankind had for itself. A hatred above any entity, concept, phenomenon, system, anything that had once danced those plains when they were unviolated by a pervasive desire for self-destruction. No. Accepting that amidst my steel-sheltered existence was akin to the sensation of having my nails ripped off, one by one.
It has been 142 days since we departed,
commented the submarine commander, whom I remained a single rank below.
And we have continued without any issues. This is an issue,
I returned.
No one else is out there. Why do we need anyone else? We have everything we need to live down here. Anytime we need something, we have the capacity to emerge and get it. There should be enough food stored above there to sustain us for the rest of our lives. Why must I baby this to you, Colonel Troy?
He turned to the others in the room.
Good morning, and you are all dismissed.
When only he and I remained, he sighed, before a grin flashed across his face.
We need to reroute the submarine over to the southwestmost island to us. The pre-war reports estimate that the buried supplies hold enough food for everyone in the submarine for a while.
He passed me a map of the island, with several points marked on it with red.
These are the areas where the supplies are available. We need everything excavated in the course of 24 hours to avoid excessive exposure to the radiation above. Be at the control room by 0900 hours.
With a pat on the shoulder, his exit left me alone with the sound of silent sonar. The scans passed like waves stretching toward far and distant beachheads that, from what the waves could see, were non-existent. I knew I could not get lost in those sweeping lines as I convinced myself to be separate from these endless scans. Unlike them, I knew there was at least one other submarine in the water when we got the fatalistic transmission from above. At least one, meaning there could be 2, 3, perhaps even 4. They ran our same fuel. They could still be out there. The atolls and islands were not the only pockets of resources buried over the scorched earth. So it wasn't definite that they had starved. They would have faced the same predicament as us, and surely they would have had to follow similar mannerisms and commands. So with 142 days of empty seas, where are they? Why are you doing this? Why are you hiding? My fist clenched as if the tightness of it could somehow pull the distant vessels any closer. Please, for the love of God, do something. Do anything. If the other submarines had been hijacked, I wouldn't care. If they had blown up, I wouldn't care. If they had been against us this whole time, had wanted this for humanity and housed the architects of destruction in its confines, I wouldn't care. Even if the submarine is the enemy, I wouldn't care, as long as some form of signal was given. Something to keep me from clutching at straws and failing to return answers to the constant interrogations of my psyche from both external and internal forces. It was obviously pointless. I needed to get back to work. The control room mostly provided no sanctuary to the abrasion of my thoughts. Its confines only guilted me into thinking I was trying to distract myself with the more pressing matters of my psyche, irrespective of the importance of the work at hand. But today, that guilt was looser, those gnawing thoughts a little quieter, redirected to finalizing the chartering of our route to the island. "Sir," someone at one of the panels began, "our reports from last night have returned to us no signs of radiation around the southern and western points of the island." "Okay," I responded. "I maintain my position that we need to keep around the deeper waters to avoid any prolonged exposure to surface elements. We have already reached an area effectively free from radiation. Rising to the surface holds no real substantial risks. And of what benefit is it to emerge? It would allow us to replenish our oxygen levels, in the case we remain submerged for longer than anticipated." "Right," I sighed, and took a seat back in the room. "We will continue along our original path towards the surface." With the absence of any further statements, the crew pushed forward with the decision. Shouldn't I have been happy? Being further from the endless depths meant a greater chance of some contact, a potential of reaching an elevation that another submarine was on, or the discovery of some other ship from above. It was what I wanted, right? As the crew moved through their coordinated iterations to adjust the submarine to changing pressures, I felt my mind caught again in pincers, in seeing them always in meter, synchronized with a sense of technical elegance. My familiarized delight felt as if it was curling back, as one keels back in old age following a lifetime of growing upwards. And on this day, it finally twisted back enough to impale my heart, forcing my focus to return inwards. After the many days I had to bear witness to their work, these people seemed to merge with the room around me. Their humanity, Their life became only another part of a cyclical process, its steel wheels growing sharper through their rotations as opposed to blunting from friction. After 142 days, this wheel had thinned and mangled itself into a buzzsaw, accompanying the puncturing cacophony of every agonizing step of my life. The booming metronome of their footsteps, the slurry of their pre-prepared and practiced phrases, their tensioned content of my command and my desires as they attempt to assimilate me into the known throughout a permeation of my thoughts. Their movements and commands across the room stretched to the limits of my peripherals, and in that moment it became so overwhelming that the matter of a handful of people in a single room 10,000 feet below the ocean became everything that existence offered. A reminder of the disgust of food against the walls of a mouth. A reminder of the agonizing buckling of one's ribs as they breathe. A reminder of leathery eyelids scraping upon one's eyeballs. A reminder of the dryness in one's mouth as they speak, the scraping of bony joints and movements, and the perpetual migraine blowing up the soft and tender confines of one's brain like a balloon animal. In that moment, it became impossible to see, remember, or imagine anything beyond images of forks scraping against plates, fingernails on chalkboards, the misplaying of notes on a reed. All these images revolving in circles, ovals, cycles, like waves towards beachheads, sandpaper waves, scratching the air. But the air gave no response. None at all. I could no longer trust these people. I don't mean I didn't believe them or believed them to be evil. I could no longer trust these people to help me, and I could not envision that they could see life as anything different than these rough images in my brain. I had been lobotomized by aquatic trenches, despite the millions of years for which life had roamed and its spectacular uniqueness and a boundless universe. Even with a potential for an afterlife or an overwhelming entity, I could not perceive its existence as beyond lukewarm. And with the lukewarm significance of my existence extending to the perceptions of anything around me, the understanding that they could not be without my senses contaminated them with the poisons of my brain. For everything I knew, my withering psyche became the center and heart for life around me. The walls of the room suddenly jolted, with a force that had not been anticipated for months. The perfection in the movements of my subordinates shuddered, everyone quick to alertness to the sudden impact against the submarine.
What the hell was that?
One man exclaimed.
Reports of some sort of collision at the back of the submarine,
another assessed.
I thought we had sensed these waters to be clear of threats. Could it be a torpedo of some sort? What even is worth fighting us over?
Through the scramble, I shot back to focus.
How does it look?
I inquired.
We cannot detect any foreign object or vessel behind the submarine. More comprehensive report coming now,
another man added.
A mine has hit the back of the submarine. It must have slid past the sonar.
I see, I pondered. Slow down the engines. I need to inspect the damage. Stay put. Then, Colonel Troy left. In the control room, confusion soon overtook the initial panic. What did he mean by stay put? Now that everyone was out of the eyes and ears of their commanding officers, the tension in their speech loosened as people spoke more freely.
Will he be back soon?
A man began.
He usually stays within the command room. Look, Thomas!
Another voice responded.
We should have control over things here for the time being. The colonel should know what he's doing.
I suppose that's true, Thomas mumbled. But it has been ages since we've experienced something like this, Samantha.
It's fine. He knows not to touch the airlocks in a situation like this. He made that emphatic last time we had a collision like this.
I mean, he seems a bit on edge lately. It feels like we haven't really seen him much outside of the control room. I think he's using too much of the vessel's energy on the long-range sonar.
Well, it's not like we have an energy shortage. And if we run out, we can go up again.
Yeah, but never for too long. The last thing we want is someone dying from radiation here.
Given the situation now, that's probably the least of our worries.
As long as the airlocks stay tight. The submarine is the safest place on Earth. Samantha scoffed. Miss any family or friends? Thomas changed the subject.
I try to keep my mind off that.
Maybe they could have gotten to some bunker.
Realistically,
Then a crash. A flood. Then nothing.
I didn't mean to. I swear, I didn't mean to cause this. I'd run to the damaged area of the submarine for inspection just to see what happened. When I got there and saw nothing damaged internally, I figured there would be nothing to stop me from taking a look from the outside to give everyone a report straight from the eye. The pressure adaptive suit for external inspection of the submarine had been right there. And there were again no roadblocks toward any attempt to use it. Any lock that was or could have held me back was not beyond my clearance, and I began to march through the airlocks outside of the submarine to inspect the damage. That's all I wanted to do. I swear, it's all I wanted to do. Inspect the damage. It just so happened that once outside the steel beast, my harness was perhaps a bit loose, and the rope was a bit jaunty. It was to be expected. After many daily checkups outside the submarine by technicians and the motion of the ocean not always being predictable, that the rope was, on the 142nd day below the surface, a tad bit weaker. I figured it couldn't be an issue for my weight. It was not like I was eating much anyways down there. It was a fine idea. Get a real eyewitness report of the issue at hand, beyond blind scans of echolocation and the mindless beeps of sonar that still returned. No, refused to give me anything. And as a part of the suit for repairs, you would have a tool set, of course. One of those tools being a knife, and maybe the rope should have held me more, been stronger, strong enough to resist me as I cut through it and pushed away from my prison. Simultaneously, the submarine imploded. As I said, again, and I will say again, I didn't mean for it to happen. Maybe something went wrong with the airlocks, or another projectile had hit the submarine to finish the job. I didn't do it. But when I saw it all crumble, dimly under the head torch of the suit, I felt something. When I perished in cutting the rope and letting the deep take me, the submarine was too consumed by the ocean. I felt that an internal assessment had finally been confirmed, that everything I perceived around me was stringed and wired and dependent upon the continued existence as a person to remain, and upon death. That was it. Nothing remains. No concept
of being remembered. When death arrives, everything goes, meaning the world as you see it effectively caves in through your demise. But as I floated in the frigid darkness, my attritional struggle upon that vessel ceased to be. I had everything I wanted. For 142 days. I didn't want anything. I didn't want to be anywhere. I didn't want to be with anyone. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be. But now, I had everything. I was nowhere. Everyone was gone. There was nothing to be done. I was soon to no longer be. My submerged purgatory felt so soothing in comparison to the constant anxiety of trying to reach outside contact. My feet were finally suspended, away from the cruelties of gravity that locked me towards steel floors or carpet. As the lights from my suit faded away, laughter finally soothed the buckling of my ribs with the lukewarm waters of existence carried away like mist. Thanks for listening, and thank you to my two authors this evening, Tuesday and Manhat. Two singular names like Cher. Thank you so much for your stories. And if you'd like to follow the show, you can follow on social media. You can follow the show at Scare You to Sleep on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you'd like to follow me, you can follow me at Shelby B. Novak on Twitter and Instagram. And thank you so much for your many very lovely comments on my latest personal post. They made me feel pretty, so thank you for that. If you'd like a story to be considered to be on the show, please send it to scareyoutosleep@gmail.com. No need to send a pre-email that asks if you can send in a story. Just go ahead and send it in, and it will be considered. I'll put it in my little file, and if you hear back from me, then yay. Remember to please specify in the subject line whether it is a fictional submission or a nonfiction submission. So I would really appreciate that. And again, let me talk about Patreon really quick for those listening. So basically, and Patreon has put out a lot of newsletters and things about this. If you Google it, Patreon, Apple, 30%. Basically, Patreon is making Apple is making Patreon give up 30% of their revenue. That everything that's bought on the iOS store. I'm not an Apple user. I never have been, so I apologize if I get some of this terminology backwards or wrong. And since I am a Patreon ambassador, I've actually gotten to speak to some of the folks over at Patreon, and they are doing their best to make this transition as smooth as possible. So basically, their only options were you can toggle a switch. Each user can toggle a switch that charges 30% more, and you don't get that huge chunk taken out of your subscriptions. Or you can have it turned off, in which people will that 30% will be taken out, and it will affect basically 30% of my income from Patreon, again, from iOS users, which I know is not all of you, but 30% of income is a lot. That's on top of the percentage that Patreon already takes out, and it would be life-ruining for a lot of people. In fact, I saw a lot of people really, really upset because if this like I said, we have this workaround now where we can either charge the extra 30% or you can go to a browser. Because a lot of people make a bulk of their income off of Patreon. A lot of people who do like classes, and definitely a lot of teachers. I know someone who is like writing a novel on Patreon, basically releases it chapter by chapter. And some creators don't have other outlets to, kind of gather an income or gather payment for their services, essentially. And so this is really devastating news. I don't really understand why Apple is doing it other than greed and money. I don't know. I hope that Apple doesn't like take my show off of their app for saying that. I'm just little old me. I don't think they'll probably even know. If you work for Apple and you heard me say that, then JK. just kidding. Anyway, Apple was very good to me in the beginning of my podcast, so I do appreciate that. But this whole thing is honestly just perplexing. They're doing it to Facebook, and I know that Facebook creators, it's basically they're just Facebook's just letting all the creators take a hit. I think they did it to like Fortnite, and Fortnite tried to sue them about it, and I don't know exactly what happened there. I don't want to say anything that's not true. But if you look it up, they're doing it to a lot of different apps. Again, that's why in the beginning I made sure to say if you are on iOS and you have some sort of app where you pay a subscription, I would double check what you're paying on your app versus what you would be paying on a browser. Again, I don't want to say this for sure, but I was someone in who I was discussing this with said that I think Netflix, for instance, it's more expensive if you like sign up through your browser or through your iOS app as opposed to signing up on a browser. And so I think a lot of companies have gone to where they just charge more on iOS to, maintain that deficit. So that's that. Sorry for the boring like corporate news, but it is something that affects a lot of us, and it was a very scary thing to hear for a lot of us. Patreon has saved my life definitely more times than one, especially again, I've mentioned it over the last few months when my life changed tremendously. Patreon was a huge help to have that semi-steady income. It goes up and down, but semi-steady income. And so, yeah, I would check into that. Also, if you are subscribed through your app, I don't know if it's like retroactive, if it's going to start charging you more. I'm not really exactly sure how it works. Again, I don't have iOS either, so I can't even check it on my own. There were some articles written. Patreon put out some newsletters about it. Please Google it and do whatever you need to do to not pay an extra 30%, or for you not to let your favorite creators get 30% of their income taken away. So yeah, anyway, done talking about Patreon. But by the way, I guess I should just throw in, if you'd like ad-free episodes and if you'd like bonus episodes, go check out patreon.com/scareyoutosleep. There's a new full-length bonus episode on the Patreon right now for $3 and up listeners, and it is called The Sea Witch. It's a fun story, so go check that out. I also have another bonus coming up. It's actually like already done, fully edited and everything, but because The Sea Witch came out, I didn't want to like overload my patrons with too much like bonus stuff. I know you all have other podcasts to listen to, so that's going to be coming out probably Monday, or maybe tomorrow. I don't know. Maybe I'll be feeling like uploading some bonus content tomorrow. Let me know if you hear this. If you're like, it's Sunday, upload it. It's a ramble. Then the other bonus thing is a ramble. And I actually filmed video for it, which I'm trying to get better at doing for, stuff like the rambles where I do a video version and just an audio version. So I did that for this. Spoiler alert, part of it, I'm like, I think we should just call this Bitch You to Sleep, because I just like went off about like book talkers. It was the whole thing. Anyway, what else is there to let you know about? I don't think there's anything else I knew I had like things to say. So this Patreon thing was a big one. I couldn't let anyone know until Monday, and then my show doesn't come out till Friday, and Patreon seemed to do a pretty good rollout of like letting people know. So I figured maybe you've heard this from your other favorite creators. I just like assumed I'm one of your favorite creators. I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just like put myself in that category. But yeah, I'm sure you've heard it from others, but I wanted you to hear it from me as well, just in case. So go check that out. Okay, that was kind of long. That was a little bit long. So I don't know if so many of you have said you do like the rambles. Let's see. Well, it's easiest to start these rambles when I talk about what I baked this week. And I didn't bake anything this week. Yeah, I had kind of a weird week. I won't get into all of it, but I don't know. Those of you who have been in I don't know. I got some really crazy, really traumatic information this week. How do I say this in like a cryptic, diplomatic way? I got some very traumatic information this week, and it was like compiled with also like reconnecting with some friends who I haven't seen in a very long time. And so it was kind of it was a very emotionally taxing week, and I didn't bake. I basically just went and got a tub of ice cream like in the movies. And I ate a few bites of it. I don't know why I got a whole tub, mostly because I wanted Neapolitan, and I don't think Neapolitan comes in like a pint. I've never seen it in a pint. It's only ever in like the family size, like cartons or tubs, basically. So, that's what I got. Yeah, it was just a very emotionally taxing week. That's why I really appreciated some of your very kind comments on my Instagram. That was really nice to just have a little, ego boost. It's nice to have an ego boost. And this information had to do with, God, I could get into it. I could get into it, but I'm not going to, because I think it would open a whole can of worms. But basically, sometimes you find things out in the future. You think that all the trauma's gone. You found everything out that's going to bother you, and then you find out something else, and it's just ruins your whole day. And I'm going to be fucking completely 1000% honest with you. That's why this episode is late, because yesterday I got that information and it was horrific, and I sat in a Target parking lot looking off into the middle distance for a while. And I went into that Target and I got a bunch of like self-care items, I guess, like a bath soak and some scrubs and some new conditioner. And like I went and got a tub of ice cream from there too, and needed a day. I needed a day. You ever get information and you're like, you go to one of your friends and you're like, I got this information and I feel really, because this is exactly what I did. I was like, I feel really stupid for being this upset about this. And every friend, like the few friends that I told, because I didn't even tell all my friends because it's so bad. It's one of those things like, I don't even like talking about it, and they were all like, what the fuck? Like, you absolutely should be very, 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 very upset about it. And I had a couple friends who were like, hey, you should go to therapy about this. So anyway, sorry, that was my chair. Anyway, I'm sorry to be cryptic, but it's like we're friends, but like the government's listening. That's how I see it. Our relationship is like, we're like having this like FaceTime conversation. Well, I guess not FaceTime on the podcast. We're having a phone conversation for these rambles, but like we know like someone's listening in the other room. So I have to be like secretive. I actually mentioned that in the ramble that's going to go up tomorrow or the next day, that if you catch me in real life and I've had like a vodka cranberry, then I'll probably just tell you all about it. I'm a pretty open book. But yeah, anyway, this has been kind of long because I talked about Patreon for forever. I didn't bake anything this week. I'm so sorry. Man, I'm just like, Patreon is taking 30% of income, and here's some trauma dumping. What a ramble, right? Boo. Tomato. Okay, I'm gonna go. And I love you very much. And thank you so much for listening. Again, ramble will be going up. The ramble was before I got this information, and you'll see now. Okay, so just so all of you Patreon people know, the ramble happened before I got this information. And in the ramble, I specifically am like, this week is really weird and something is like happening. And like, there's some, like, I felt something, like I felt the energy around me gearing up to something. And so it's kind of spooky looking back. I'm not going to lie. 'Cause it was like, whoa, it's like, I don't know, you know, I don't know what's out there. I don't know if there's a higher power or if we're in a fucking like simulation, but sometimes things do get spooky. There's some synchronicities in the world that happen that is just like, whoa, that was pretty weird. There's like a lot of little ones too that I've gone over with some friends, and it's pretty spooky, but I do think I've got some, you know, I've got goodness around me, but you know, it's life is all about those. I talk about it in the ramble. So sorry to repeat myself for those who are going to listen, but like those idle Tuesdays where you just get hit with something like a phone call that's either incredible or devastating. And like, I had a lot of those idle Tuesdays this week. It was pretty bizarre. Most of them were very good. And then there was one very big, very bad one. And, you know, you just got to roll with the punches and keep on keeping on and all that stuff, all those platitudes. All right, I'm going to go. I love you so much. Thank you for listening. By the way, again, thank you for listening to me talk like this. And thanks for following me on the social media. It does help me out a lot when you follow me on social media, because basically whenever people might add people at the network or like trying to be like, look, please buy ads on her show, or like, please, new movie, sponsor this show, like the Boogeyman campaign, they will consider my social media. So I do appreciate that. I notice a little boost whenever I mention it. Like I'll notice a few more followers and I'm like, oh, that's so nice of them. They listened. Thank you so much. And if you don't do social media because you're a much better adjusted human being, then that's also totally fine. That's totally fine as well. Good on you, you know. Get out of the machine. Okay, I love you. Go get some sleep. Sweet dreams.
Get 3 coffins ready, kid, because our latest podcast, Make My Day, is venturing off into the wild and sprawling frontier that is Clint Eastwood's career. More movies than Stephen King has books, and more genres than all of the franchises we've covered over at the Halloweenies. Now, I know what you're thinking. Do they really need to start another show? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I kind of lost track myself. But being this is a podcast, the most powerful medium in the world for pop culture conversation, and Clint's output is infinite, you've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do ya, punk? Find out today and subscribe to Make My Day, a Clint Eastwood podcast now, wherever you get your audio.